Kevin, can you go around all the equipment in the room and show us how it all works?
Certainly, we can take a look at that.
Awesome.
Go this way. So the brewing process starts right here in what's called the mash tun, and the barley malt gets crushed and broken open. It goes in here with some warm water, about 148 to 158 degrees, depending on which beer we're making. After it sits in here for an hour, the starches get changed to sugars, and then we're ready to run it off. Actually, we do a little thing called boil off, which is a German word for recirculate.
Oh.
And it helps clear up the mash, so we just pump it from the bottom to the top. It takes about 20 minutes, and then after that, we're ready to run it to the kettle to do our boil, and that's right over here.
Okay.
So this is the boil kettle, and it's just a giant pot. Not much in there now. It's heated by steam. So after it takes about an hour, we sparge. We keep rinsing the grain to get all the sugars out of the grain. It takes about an hour to fill this up, and then we bring it to a boil, and that's when we add our hops. So our first hop addition is for bittering, and then throughout the boil, we add hops at different times, depending on which kind of beer it is and the amount of hops that are done. So after it gets done boiling, we let it rest for a little while with a whirlpool to bring the proteins and things to the center. So when we draw up here, we don't get them into the fermenter. So now we need to get them from here to the fermenter for the yeast to make the beer. The only problem is this is around 200, 210 degrees now, and the yeast needs it at 68 degrees. So we go through what's called a heat exchanger. It kind of works like the radiator of your car, but instead of having air go through it, it has cold water on one side and the hot water on the other side. So it comes out of here at 200 degrees, and it'll go into the fermenter at 68 degrees, and the fermenter is right over here.
Okay.
So this again takes about 40 minutes, 50 minutes to get the hot wort chilled down and into the fermenter. And this is where the beer is actually made. So now we add the yeast, and the yeast is what really makes the beer. Us as brewers just try to make a happy place for the yeast to live. So the yeast is eating up all the sugars, and it's giving CO2 gas out, and it's also releasing alcohol. So that'll take about 5 to 7 days for that to happen. And then for our pale ales and IPAs, things that are dry hop, we actually add hops to the fermenter. Let it set for a few more days, and then we drop the temperature on this. So this is temperature controlled. It has a jacket in here that liquid runs through it, food grade liquid. Doesn't touch the beer or anything. Just keeps it temperature wise. And now after we chill it down, the yeast will drop down to the bottom, and we can take the yeast out to use again. And then after a couple more days, everything's nice and clear. We'll take the beer out of here and run it into the cold room. And there's another tank in there called the bright tank. And that's where the final conditioning of the beer is and the final carbonation. We'll collect some carbonation on the beer here. You can see this one actually I brewed a week ago. I just dry hopped this morning. So it's closed up, and you see I have a little pressure up there on the gauge. So I'm already capturing CO2. So I don't need as much to add as much CO2 to the beer to get to the proper carbonation level. So it'll sit in there for a couple days, and that's where the beer will clear and be ready to either drink right out of the tank through our taps or get packaged into kegs.
Okay, very cool. So
The process from the grain until you can drink it in your glass is anywhere from a very fast beer would be 14 days to 21 days for our ales. If we do any lagers, we usually do proper lagering, and that's maybe 6 to 8 weeks for the beer.
What? And I drink mine in less than 5 minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow, that's a lot of work. Well, I really appreciate it because I know it's all delicious. So that's great. Thank you for showing us that. Awesome.
Sure.
So Kevin, how does your beer connect with the island, the feel of the Virgin Islands?
Well, we're located in Frenchtown, so we embrace Frenchtown. So as many people know, there's several Eiffel Towers in Frenchtown. So when we designed our tap handles, we said, okay, let's have an Eiffel Tower. And then this rooster, as there's a lot of chickens and roosters in Frenchtown also, and this rooster actually used to live out back, and we took pictures of him, and they were all hand painted to match him. He was the beautiful, the prettiest rooster I've ever seen. So,
That is really, really cool. That's very cool. So at the moment, the Eiffel Tower we have out there is only about this tall right now since the hurricanes, right?
Yes.
But this would be the full effect. But that's really awesome. I'm really glad you guys chose to take that path on it.
And
That's
there's
very
another,
cool.
there's another Eiffel Tower. There's one at the entrance of Frenchtown, but there's also one over at the Frenchtown Heritage Museum
Yeah,
that sits out front there.
and that one's normal. Very cool.
So now there's nothing else to do but enjoy some beer if you would like.
All right, sounds good to me.
Which would you like?
Let's try the cream ale. All right, so I have here the cream ale. And how long exactly does it take to make this one? This is a lighter one you guys have, right?
Yes, that's a lighter one. That one goes a little faster. Sometimes the fermentation, depending on how much alcohol is going to be in the beer, because that matters how much grain is in it. So if this is one of our lower alcohol beers, and so the yeast goes through the sugar a little quicker. So this could be done like in 5 days for the primary fermentation, and then a couple more days for conditioning. But these all basically take 14 to 17 days right here because they're all ales.
Okay.
But the ones that are dry hop tend to take a little longer. So our pale ale and our IPA and the pale ale take about 4 or 5 more days than like say the brown or the cream ale.
Cool. Right.
So our brown ale is a mixture between an American and an English style ale. It's not really any specific style that's like the GABF style, and it's a mashup kind of between American and an English one. So it has some English malts in it, some English hops, but it also has some American hops and American yeast. So we really made it to complement a barbecue restaurant's beer or their food, the beer to go with the food. And they wanted something that's more drinkable, so it's not heavy. It's a dry brown ale.
Okay.
Coffee stuff. Our IPA is kind of a West Coast style IPA, 7.2% alcohol, and hopped with citrus, Simcoe, and Amarillo. The 86 and Sunny Pale Ale is an American style pale ale at about 6.4% alcohol, and it's dry hop with a hop called Falconer's Flight, give it some citrusy kind of flavors. And the cream ale is one of only 3 historical American style beers. One being a cream ale, the other one being California Common, which most people associate Anchor Steam Ale with that. And the third one being a Kentucky Common, which is kind of a cream ale with dark malts. So it was made originally to compete with German lagers that were taking over the U.S. at the turn of the century. And the Americans weren't set up to do lagering processes. They were still all doing ales. So they had to try to brew something that was really light and flavored and not malty or not fruity like a lot of ales to compete with German Pilsners. And they came up with that style. And there's still a few around. They were kind of almost gone, and then craft brewers have kind of brought them back.
Okay.
And we don't have it on tap here right now, but we have a Belgian style farmhouse ale. We call it Frenchy Farmhouse. And it's a classic Belgian saison style.
Okay. Very cool. I have not tried that one yet, but this cream ale is my favorite one. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.